Okay, we'll see you when you get here. Uh, so I have a caveat before we get going and a request. And the caveat is this. Um, this is actually a topic that I have never taught on before. And it's very different from what we typically talk about when we talk about the impact of trauma on the development of the brains of children and adults, and we talk about how to remediate those things and how trusting relationships. That's all the stuff that we normally talk about. We talk about attachment cycles, and we talk about, you know, meeting sensory and physiological needs and all of those things. I'm not going to talk about any of that today. Today I'm talking about a topic that is, here's how I came at this. Um, in doing all of that training for uh, on, and we train everybody from foster parents, adoptive parents, to well, now we train parents of any stripe. We train schools, we've trained churches, and so now we've gone from training individuals to training organizations. And whenever you make that step, well, now we've started to realize, well, uh, there's a lot that touches that. Public policy touches that, culture, uh, you know, and so you really have to start thinking about what is it that I need to do to get from point A to point B, yes, as an individual, but also as an organization, right? Because frankly, as an organization that provides a lot of training, I'm not interested in providing training for training's sake. I'm not interested in doing training because I just like getting in front of people and hearing myself talk. Although I do like getting in front of people and hearing myself talk. Um, what I'm interested in is change. I'm interested in seeing people move towards a goal, whether it's a foster parent who needs to understand the needs of their foster child better, or if it's an organization that's supposed to care for these children, but more often than not is falling short of that. I'm interested in the change. I'm not interested in the training so much. Does that make sense? So that opened, like, all of a sudden now I'm okay, well, what tools do we need for that? Because we can do training all day long, and there will still be places that don't move the needle. In fact, we see it happen over and over again where somebody will sit through 24 hours of our training. An organization will sit through 24 hours of our training. And then after 3 months, they'll be like, this doesn't work. We're not doing this anymore. No matter how much science I show them, no matter how much we can point to other places that doesn't work, we're moving on. Okay. So I'm really not interested in just talking about the content. We want to see a difference. And so that's where this essay by Wendell Berry stepped in. And actually, this should probably be more of like a 4 or 5 part series, but you're going to get the first 2. You're going to get one this week and one next week. But it's something that's incredibly important. If we want to see this type of, if we want to see movement, if we want to see the needle move. So that's the caveat. I've never taught this before, but it's really important that I get good at teaching this. And so I'm going to ask for you to ask questions. I'm going to ask for you to tell me where it's not clear. Let me know what I need to do to be able to help communicate this better, because it's really important. At the end of the day, it's going to be important for people within organizations who are really not interested in the philosophy of this stuff. They just want to see their workplace get better. And it's going to be important for me to be able to communicate some of these concepts to people who don't have as much time to think about this stuff as I do. So, so I've called this Growing the Good, because it really is about how we move systems from one place to another. We all operate within systems. We are a system, right? We'll talk about this more later, but one thing that we need to get better at is this solving and evolving, and we're going to talk about what that means in just a little bit. Well, we're going to talk about it right now, right? Which, by the way, and I want to bring this home for y'all. So we came to the anniversary celebration, the service that they had in here, and before that, I did not realize the rich history that not only this church, but this Sunday school class has to it, right? Yeah. And while I was listening to Pastor Bob talk about this class and the role that this class played all those years ago, I thought to myself, my God, my goodness, this is an illustration of exactly what I'm going to be talking about. Like, what is it that causes an individual or an organization to realize that change needs to happen? Right? Or what is it? What happens? Well,
dissatisfaction with the status quo.
Dissatisfaction. There's an ideal or an optimal status or state, and we are falling short of it. There's a contradiction there, right? And this class saw, the members of this class saw during the 1960s that there are some ideals, some optimal states that Christ put before us, that in not including our African American brothers and sisters, we were falling short of that. Yes? Yes. And you made a decision. You made a decision to take steps to change, right? The unfortunate thing is that there are so many organizations who, whether it's for whatever reason, right? They don't feel like they have the agency or the efficacy. They're afraid of what will happen if they take steps. They simply don't address it, right? Or maybe they address it and they address it in the wrong way. And so what we'd like to talk about today is how we evaluate the problems that are leading, like the contradictions that are leading us to feel like that are leading us to think there needs to be change. But then also, how do we evaluate the solutions? Because the last thing we want to do is take steps and realize, wait a second, it could be that. It could all, like, so in Barry's essay, and by the way, most of the content today will be drawn from an essay that Wendell Berry wrote called Solving for Pattern. It's a very short essay, about 7 pages long. He wrote it back in 1980. And for those of you who don't know Wendell Berry is a farmer, environmentalist, activist, philosopher, novelist, essayist, poet. The list goes on, right? But in doing all of these things, and I don't know what the chicken and what the egg is, right? Does he see all of these connections and therefore that comes out in his writing, or does he, become good at all of these disciplines and therefore he sees connections more than some of us do? But what he does is he writes about everything from economics to philosophy to farming, right? And this particular essay is about a dairy farm, but it's not about a dairy farm, right? Actually, the principles within this essay can be extrapolated to just about anything, any context. And we're going to talk about how that's the case in just a little bit. The last thing we want to do is put a solution in place that is like Barry says that there are three types of solutions, right? And two of them you don't want, right? Because one of them will be a solution that will bring about new problems, right? We don't want that. Another type of solution is one that you put in place and it actually just makes the problem that you were trying to address worse. Okay. But then there's the solution that solves for pattern. And when he says solving for pattern, what he means is this: we all operate within bigger contexts. And when we start to realize the pattern of those contexts, and we'll talk about, you'll see this more explicitly when we talk about the dairy farm. When we start to see the pattern within those contexts, and we start to see how everything fits together as systems, instead of just attacking a problem with the most obvious solution or the most expedient solution or the most direct solution, that when we solve for the pattern of our system, what we realize is that not only do we solve the problem that we're trying to solve, but we start to see corrections in a whole host of areas that we weren't trying to address. Does that make sense? So obviously the one we want is here. And to illustrate that, I do want to tell you the story of Earl Spencer's farm. This is the story that Barry talks about in the essay. Earl Spencer was a farmer in the 70s and 80s who, by all accounts, was, approaching farming in a fairly traditional sense, right? He fed, it was a dairy farm, and he had increased his herd to about 70 cows. He fed he grew some of the things that he fed his cows, but then he also would sell the corn and the alfalfa as crops. But then he also bought a good amount of the feed that he gave to his cows. And his intention one day was to buy all of that feed for his cows. Made heavy use of fertilizers, and there was not a bit of his land that was unused, right? Unutilized. If it wasn't land that he had the cows on, then it was land that he was growing as row crops. And then he had a season where he realized there was one of his fields was actually on a slope. And he realized after a particularly wet season that the corn that he had planted on that sloping field was not growing. And he was forced to make a decision where he was either going to have to buy half of his feed for the cows for the year, or he's going to have to sell half of his herd. Now, most farmers would have chosen the former. This is an observation that Barry makes. It was the more conventional thought. Spencer chose to do the latter because what he realized was, wait a second, there's something within the system of my farm that's not healthy. There's something that has broken down in what should be the natural order of how a farm operates. Uh, and so he sold half of his herd. And what he ended up doing was taking that sloping field. He realized that the soil in that field it was deteriorating because of runoff. And so what he decided was, you know what, instead of growing crops on this slope, I'm going to put grass out there and use that for grazing for the rest of my herd. That step by itself set in motion a series of changes within the farm that made him realize, oh, wait a second, like he found, he solved for the pattern, right? So in growing the grass, first of all, the grass kept the runoff from deteriorating the soil, right? So the soil improved in that area. And then in letting the cows loose to graze instead of keeping them in pens, they started fertilizing more of the soil. And he was able to take that, like obviously that improved the soil in that area, but then he could also take that fertilizer and spread it throughout, right? So all of a sudden now his need for fertilizer is going down. His need for chemical fertilizer is going down. Because the food that he had been giving to the cows had been raised with chemical fertilizer, a lot of them had been suffering, getting infections and things like that. And now because he's restoring this with a more natural approach to farming, the cows are healthier, right? And the cows that he has left they started producing more milk. So it's like he experienced this cascade of positive benefits from making this one decision, but it came about because instead of attacking the problem, right? Well, the problem is I don't have enough feed this time. I'm just gonna have to buy feed, right? The most immediate, the most at-hand solution. He started thinking about the pattern of the farm. Does that make sense? And the pattern of the farm included the soil and the crop and the cows, but it also included him. He was in all of that. And that's important for us to think about, that all of this has to be, like, we have to think about all of the parts of these systems, okay? So does everybody kind of understand the illustration of Earl Spencer's farm and this principle that when we find the pattern, we don't just solve the problem that we're trying to solve, but we actually yield health in all of these other areas of the system too, okay? All right. So from that, Barry draws some principles of what a good solution looks like, right? Not a solution that's going to make the problem worse, not a solution that's going to create new problems, but a solution that a good solution, a solution that solves for the pattern of the system. And the first is that we have to accept some limitations, right? We all have this natural tendency to want to see our good thing grow, right? Yeah. We at the Pearl Project want to help as many people as we can, right? Earl Spencer, I'm sure, thought that he had a good crop. He wanted to spread that to as many people as possible. Maybe not completely altruistically, maybe because he makes more money the more crop he sells, right? And Barry admits, yes, there can be such a thing as too small of a farm. But I have to accept the limitations of what I'm like as the farmer. I have to accept what my limits are in terms of the amount that I can properly care for here. Okay, so the acceptance of scale and place prevents the creation of at some point, this thing gets to where it's so big that I can't manage it anymore. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So it has to, if it's going to grow, it has to grow in a way that it can stay healthy. Okay. I also need to accept limitations of discipline. And this is where Barry, like we can attack an organic problem with a technological solution, but that's probably going to create problems for us. We see this happen all the time at the Pearl Project, where people try to address a relational problem with an industrial systematic solution.
Examples.
Yeah, so let's think about, and we're going to talk about some examples later, but think about the school system, right? First of all, you want to talk about a system that has grown beyond what is manageable for the, right? But we have an ideal to educate all children. So what do? We have adopted a very industrial, systematic, they go to this part, they go to this part, they go to this part, they go to this part. And how many children end up falling through those cracks? Right? A lot. Right? Whether it's because of developmental delays or learning disabilities or problems at home that, right? But we create these cracks because we sort of assume that all children should just go along at the same rate. Is that making sense? Yeah. So we've taken a very industrial, we've taken a very relational problem, right? The child's relationship with other people, the child's relationship with the earth, the child's relationship with their past, with humanity's past, the child's relationship with themselves. And we have put this industrial answer to it. Teach them this part here, and this part here, and this part here, right? For Earl Spencer, it was, I could have bought more fertilizer, right? I could have, or Barry in his essay uses the example of we see farmers who approach the problem of soil compaction with bigger tractors, right? Which is just going to compact the soil more in the end, all right? So instead of attacking these problems that are formed like inside of one discipline with a completely separate discipline, we need to consider the limitations of the discipline itself, right? And if I'm going to solve a relational problem, it needs to have a relational answer. If I'm going to solve an organic problem, it needs to have an organic answer. We need to consider our goals, right? And the goal that Barry points us to is creating health and balance. Okay, so promoting interconnectedness, promoting diversity. What we want is a healthier and more balanced system. Okay, and we'll talk about why that's pretty countercultural here in just a little bit. Okay. A good solution asks, how much is enough, right? In our current industrial capitalist system, enough is all I can get out of it, right? And that's not healthy for anybody. We're bleeding the earth dry, and we are, I'm going to try not to sound too much like an alarmist here, right? We're seeing people, it's become commonplace for people to feel overtaxed. It's become commonplace for people to feel burnt out, right? Because in our current mindset, enough is all I can get from it. And what we need to consider is enough what yields health. Okay. And then I need to consider the whole system. Right. This is one that was, but it shows the principle, which is that most of the systems that we're trying, whether it's a farm or an educational system, a church, a nonprofit in Marion County, Florida, we are a system that has its own individual parts, but we also operate inside of a bigger system, right? Crossroads Sunday School operates within the system of Fort King Presbyterian Church, which operates within a larger system of Presbyterian churches. Pearl Project doesn't just operate within, but it interacts with other systems. We interact with child welfare systems, education systems, right? And if I don't have an eye towards not just the health of my own system, but how those systems can be healthier, well, then it shouldn't be a wonder for me why we can't create positive change. Am I making sense so far? Okay. So all of these are sort of some principles, and Barry lays out other ones, but I'm kind of grouping some together for you. I would encourage you to find Barry's essay and read it. You can all just Google solving for pattern, and you'll find 3 or 4 places that have it. You can pop it up there. There you go. But some key takeaways for me as I was reading this was, first of all, when we evaluate our goals, our ultimate objective has to be health. The health of our system, the health of our ecosystem. Our goal has to be health. And y'all, let's face it, for most of our organizations that exist, our goal is not health. Right? Like so many businesses that operate, their goal is not health. What's their goal in business? Make as much as right?
Even with nonprofits.
Even with nonprofits. For schools, our goal is not health. What's our goal? Right. Achieve the standards. Right? We've set the standards out. We need to achieve the standard. We need numbers, people. We need numbers. The goal is not health. Okay? But whether it's a dairy farm, or if it's a school, or a church, or a nonprofit in Marion County, our goal has to be health. Not just individual health, right? But systemic health, because as Barry pointed out, we are all part of that system. And what we don't often recognize is that what's good for a part of the system is good for another part of the system. And what's good for a part of the system is good for the whole of the system. Think about the way our bodies work, right? I'm not going to address a problem with my arm in a way that's going to sacrifice another part of my body, right? That's not good system health. And when it comes to medicine, we all are like, well, of course. But it seems like within our other organizations, we have a hard time accepting that what's good for me as an individual part of the system is good. What's healthy, I should say healthy, right? What's healthy for me as an individual is healthy for the whole, and what's healthy for the whole is also healthy for me. Okay. This is a quote by Dr. David Cross, who is the co-creator of TBRI. And as in his commentaries on this essay, he says this: we won't be able to imagine or see healthy patterns. Which, think about that, right? Like it's incumbent upon us to see the healthy pattern, but we won't be able to see it until health is set down as the aim. We need to think in terms of system health as opposed to, right, the things that we very often resort to when we see problems, right? We often resort to control, efficiency, profit. And this is where for us as nonprofit, like, oh, that one hurts. Even effectiveness. I have to value the health of my organization even over effectiveness. Because when I do pursue health, what happens to my effectiveness? It gets better. I solve for the pattern and I see benefits across a whole gambit of areas. All right, so if we're going to solve a problem, here's another key takeaway. Number one is we have to pursue health. Number two, if we're going to solve a problem, the most direct or obvious or expedient answer is not always the best answer. It may not even be a good answer. It may not even be a good solution. Okay, in fact, it might make things worse.
How often do we walk in? We're going to have a meeting to address this issue, and everyone walks in already saying, well, I know the answer. We don't even need to explore the question.
Right, right.
Everyone walks in with the answer in their head already.
Yes. Yes, and there's a vital question that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, but in TBRI, as we address children and their behaviors, we say their behavior is an expression of a need, right? Their behavior is not a result of them cognitively making a decision to wake up and make my day worse, right? Yeah, believe it or not. Exactly. Exactly. And so, and it implies, and it also for systems, right? It's true for systems too. So instead of asking, like with kids, we very often say, you know, we ask the question like, what's wrong with you, right? Instead of asking, what do you need? And inside of our systems, we need to be pursuing the need. Earl Spencer realized, well, wait a second, there's a health issue here, a greater systemic health issue. And if we're going to address those problems, we have to address those needs. Okay. The systems we operate in, as well as the systems that our systems inhabit and interact with, have to be considered as systems. Systems. What does systems mean? Well, a system is just like different parts working together in an interconnected network towards a common goal, right? And we have to consider all of those parts. Our solutions that we put in place, how is it going to impact this part over here? How's it going to impact how many people when they passed the No Child Left Behind legislation of the 2000s? How many people do you think were asking the question, what's the impact going to be on the teachers? Those of you spent time in education?
I was an educator.
Okay, right?
No.
I can tell you that most of the teachers at least came away feeling like they didn't even think about how this was going to affect us. Chase needs, not outcomes. Chase needs, not outcomes. What is the need that is causing this problem to arise? Instead of how can I grow more crop, it's what is the need that is causing my crops to not grow? Instead of how can I get more cows, what do the cows need? Right? Instead of, and think about, I mean, in any context, right? Instead of how do we move from 30% of children reading proficiently to 80% reading proficiently, it's what do the kids need in this context, right? We start to recognize Oh, wait a second. How many of our kids, I was watching, what were we watching last night? Oh, Cheaper by the Dozen, right? With Steve Martin, right? Cute movie, right? In every scene where the kids are in school, I saw this yesterday, and this is not uncommon. This is not just for this movie. This is just about every portrayal of children in school, right? There's a threat, pretty imminent, whether it's the school bully or the, you know, the test, or there's something in there that is probably sending our kids down into their survival brains, right? Here's the problem. Here's what we know from brain science. Children don't do people, adults don't do higher thinking when they're in their survival brains. We're wired that way, right? Instead of asking, what does the child need to be able to do that kind of thinking, we attack the problem directly, right? They need to spend more hours practicing reading. Yeah, we take away their recess. Right. So why does any of this matter? We have gotten really, I don't know, maybe we're never good at it, but evaluating what our problems are. Okay, but then also evaluating potential solutions and considering the impacts on all parts. Okay, so we've used some examples from education, right? If we want children to learn more effectively, instead of taking away arts, taking away recess, and making them spend more time on the 3 R's, right? Maybe we should consider the system within which they learn and recognize, y'all, brains are hardwired to learn. It's innate in the way the brain operates. Brains learn. So why aren't they learning and we've accepted a lot of fallacious argument that, well, you know, this kid just isn't a history kid, or this kid isn't an art kid, or this kid isn't a math kid, right? So we shouldn't expect, in order to support our context or our current circumstance, which is that there are a lot of kids who aren't learning. Instead of asking the question, well, okay, how do we support the natural ways that kids do learn? Am I making sense here? So how do we promote the health of the whole instead of just attacking the problem directly? All right. In child welfare, right? We see organizations I'm trying to be diplomatic in the way that I talk.
You can just say
We're trying to, we have a problem in child welfare. There are not enough beds for the kids that we serve in the state, right? The state of Florida takes kids out of homes for the purpose of protecting the child. But then there's not enough foster parents, there's not enough beds. And so now we have kids sleeping in offices, we have kids sleeping in, so what's the solution to that problem? Well, we could say, I can tell you what the most immediate solution is for a lot of child welfare workers, because they need a bed. What they do is they find a foster parent and lie to them about the condition of the child so the foster parent will say yes. Go ahead and bring that kid here. Happens over and over again. And it's not because, well, that child welfare worker is just a liar. It's because that child welfare worker is operating within a system where they've got to get that kid into bed. That child welfare worker is in a state of survival. They've got to get that kid into bed, and they will do what it takes, because otherwise it's their neck. Does it make sense? So we take this problem and we impose a solution that says, you find a way to care for that child or you're fired.
But wouldn't the problem be that if they left the child with the parent, there would be worse kids, the child is in worse shape? And so where are they? They're between a rock and a hard place.
So where's the breakdown in the system, right? Why do we not have enough foster parents? Well, any foster parent will tell you, it almost takes a saint to be able to relate within that system where you're under-resourced, constantly being lied to, manipulated. You are often, foster parents will tell you, they often are seen as the bad guys. Caseworkers will tell you, well, these people make $30,000 a year, $35,000 a year sometimes, and they're tasked with impossible work. You have 30 kids and 20 beds. Sorry, figure it out. So where's the breakdown in the system, right? We're not seeing the health of the system as a priority. Instead, we are passing down mandates to try to immediately fix the problem.
Well, years
May I
ago,
just-
we have all these child care and orphanage homes, and everybody decided that was no good. Well, maybe it was better than what we have now. I don't know.
Is there a place for, and we can go down this rabbit hole if you like, is there a place for residential facilities in a healthy ecosystem? Well, I've seen it happen. But it really depends on the health of that place too, because I've seen some really unhealthy residential facilities.
If you're looking at the need, there's the need of whoever the family is. Why are they unable to take care of a child in a healthy way? Is there such a thing as a residential program for families? Where you have their parents and their children.
The root of the problem, right? Why are we needing to take kids from parents in the first place? Right? And so now you start to see the vastness of all of there are so many systems that touch the lives of individual children. Right? But if we're not approaching each of those systems with an eye towards health, then at some point that child is going to be impacted by an unhealthy system. So I have a worksheet, I almost wish we had a great big table in here. If y'all want to just, yeah.
We do.
Everybody's, but,
This way.
but I was gonna take some time to kind of workshop this, right? Because this applies to your context too. Whether it's the place that you work or the place that you volunteer or your Sunday school class. Did everybody get one? So here are some questions. In fact, I will for people who are at home, oh, I would like to pop up what they are looking at. Let's see. Okay. So this is just a series of questions that are meant to kind of take these principles and there we go. And help us apply them. So the first is that we want to consider what problems we are confronting. And tell me, Joanne, tell me what time do we end at 10? Okay. And consider this all, like, if y'all want to take these with you, if y'all have questions, if y'all want the things that y'all like, how much is this helping in terms of, yeah, that's great for Earl Spencer's farm, but why should I care about this? Right.
Not just, I mean, a lot of us are either retired or close to retirement. So yeah, you talked about volunteering, you talked about the church, you talked about nursing. But a lot of what you're talking about is general relationships, the health of a relationship, the health of your, what you decide to do with your life, or what you decide to do with your friend group, or how it's not just applicable to work and large systems, it's applicable to the microsystems as well.
Right. Because whether I'm a teacher or a parent or a friend, right? If I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not operating out of health, then what's left for the people that I'm relating to, right? We tell foster parents, we tell adoptive parents this, we tell teachers this. If I'm not operating out of health, then eventually I'm drawing from an empty well when that child needs me to be at my best. That child needs me operating at my best.
The evaluation of that is teaching people to, like you're talking about pulling a kid from the home. Is evaluating, is that detrimentally important now, or can I work with the family, as you're saying, to see if there's I mean, we do as an early childhood course all the time. We keep the family intact and work with the entire family the best we can.
Yeah.
Or is this so vital? I think part of it is the evaluation system. Have we evaluated, or it's just, this is bad, this checks these 4 boxes, let's yank this kid, or whatever your system is. And wow, is that better or worse? Can we work? I almost want to put the caseworker in the house with the family and say, I'm gonna observe this and watch this and be careful of this.
Here's your example of the industrial solution to the relational problem, right? There's not a single problem out there that a good checklist can't. Right? Yeah.
Stephen, you mentioned needs and you mentioned the example of teachers.
Yeah.
Way back, I got to spend 2 years helping plan for children's services in 3 or 4 counties from birth to 5 years old. And we did a lot of small group meetings with parents, migrant families, and Lake and Sumter. And what we found out from people, the bottom line, we don't get asked what we really need that will help us. And, you know, some basic things come out like transportation, you know, and we have all these solutions that we think these parents need, and that has to do with all kinds of things, but asking what needs to be done. To really help.
We tell parents just to sort of get into the habit of asking, what does this baby need? When we're trying to, even if it's an 18-year-old baby. You were gonna?
Well, I'm thinking of this in terms of our church. So it's making me ruminate about about things within our church that I think that we need to address personal needs sometimes more than organizational structure or patterns. Which is where I think we go too often.
Yeah.
I would say this is a, Mary Beth, a very Presbyterian thing. We think if we get our structure right, it will solve all of our problems. Uh-huh.
Committee.
You know, long as the structure is right, we won't have any problems, but that doesn't do anything about relationships. Which is why we keep trying to find a structure that'll fix the relationship.
Yes, yeah.
Instead of fixing the relationship.
Yes, if there's just the right scaffold, then but isn't so I know, in my own religious tradition growing up, butts and seats was, that's probably fairly universal, right? Butts and seats is a metric that we use to gauge success. Why not joy levels?
Why not meeting people?
If we're, and by the way, if we've created a place where people are more inclined to be joyful, will that have an impact on butts and seats? I would imagine.
Or the big box churches are gone. You've got the joyful music.
The entertainment factor.
It feels good when you walk out.
I would also argue, though, that a good number of those people like the anonymity.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Well,
Because, and that's when we have to ask the question, what's healthy about that? What's not healthy about that?
so I had this conversation with my daughter within the past week. My daughter does not go to church. There's a little piece of her that wants to, but her attempts at it have been going to church and then being grabbed in and given all sorts of things to do, and she said, I understand the big box churches because all you have to do is appear. You don't have to, they don't make you do stuff. So I think a church like ours maybe puts burden on people sometimes.
Well, isn't that true of many organizations today, particularly nonprofits? They want people who want to do something. They want doers, donors, and doorbusters. They want people. Well, they do.
Oh, that's good.
They want people who will get committed to something.
And so we ask the bigger question, right? Like, what is it in our culture where people are so burned out that it's hard to find that person who's willing to commit to once a week or to once a month, where that becomes a burden, right? What is it in our culture? Where is the unhealth in our culture?
Well, we worship work, just saying, as a culture, we do.
Are we right?
Yeah, but if we tap into the need and the help, that resolves it almost. Is what does your dog, because I can relate to your dog.
Yeah.
Is what does that person need and what would make it healthy for them?
Right.
And you're right, sometimes the anonymity, but are they getting their needs met?
Right.
I'm checking a box. I went to church and I said.
Right. Yes.
Checking a box. It's not the fulfillment you get, which is a health issue.
Right.
Well, they're satisfied, they keep going back. So they're getting something out of it, and the anonymity, I hadn't thought of that, anonymity.
Or my mom off my back.
I don't need my.
Even if it's just my mom's voice from 20 years ago, right?
Don't we have all these escape mechanisms now? Like sports and gambling, all these things are coming to the growing spectacular.
Yes.
Why?
They're escapists.
People don't commit to them. They just spend money and support.
Yes.
That's different.
Yes.
They don't have to do anything, but.
I was talking with I was talking with Mayor Marciano the other day about he wants to do something about the growth of these corner stores where you can buy these drugs that are. And what is the root of that problem? Why are people so inclined to self-medicate these days?
Escapism.
Why are people? So what is it if we're going to, in TBRI, we tell people you can't take away a tool without replacing it with another, right? I'm not going to take away that parent's, disciplinary tools without replacing it with something else, right? Otherwise, I've left them high and dry. I'm not going to take away the teacher's point system or the teacher's color system or whatever without replacing that with another tool. If I'm taking away their tool for finding some sort of peace or at least good feeling and not replacing it with something else, so what do we need to replace it with? So next week we'll talk about, this is sort of the solving for pattern sort of tells us the why. And next week we're going to talk more about the how, if that makes sense. So at least
Tell me what TBRI stands for.
TBRI stands for Trust-Based Relational Intervention. And it is a model of caregiving that came out of Texas Christian University that has that we use to teach any caregiver how to address a child's needs if they've come from early trauma. Correct. Yes.
Yeah, all people, not just kids with trauma.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why, and that all of this solving for pattern stuff comes from at the behest of the people at the Karen Purvis Institute, the people who created TBRI, because they're the ones who recognize, well, wait a second, in establishing TBRI, what we did was we drew from sort of the optimal conditions, the optimal development of children. And we started to realize, like, where was the breakdown, where was the unhealth that needs to be addressed within the whole system of the child functioning. Okay. Well, if you're going to look at optimal development for children, then that means that this approach is not just for children who have been traumatized. It's necessary for children who've been traumatized, but it's good for any child.
And any person, it seems to me.
Yes. Well, and Joy will tell you that even if you have a relationship with your pet, you can TBRI your dog. So, relational intervention. Yes. Yeah. If you go to our website, thepearlproject.org, we have a tab on there that says, "What is TBRI?" And it has a number of animated videos that you can watch that explain TBRI. Or you can come to one of our trainings that we will start in mid-February.
We haven't.
We're trying to.
Yet, but yeah, probably here. Well, talk to y'all.
Yeah. So I know we're out of time, but
And will this I'm just checking, this PowerPoint, will it be sent when the recording is sent to the?
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you could send me your PowerPoint, either you or I can turn it into a PDF and I can send it out to people. So it's kind of a shortcut.
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
sort of reminding ourselves if we saw it, or people that didn't see it
Oh, yeah.
can get it.
that'd be
Also,
great.
we'll send out a recording
Okay.
from today.
I can get a copy of that too.
Sure,
Okay.
I'll send it to you.
Joanne and Judith and I went to a conference 2 years ago. Wendellberry was the opening, not the real Wendellberry. I love Wendellberry. But I did not know his ag involvement that much. I was more in touch with him through his poetry.
Yes.
But there's a great video about agriculture. It's a Wendellberry video. I'll try to find that for you. But it talks about the shift, we're talking system shifts, what's happened to our food system and how some younger farmers, and I know a couple that are in this mindset right now, have kind of, I want revolt's a strong word, but have chosen not to participate in this big farm, lots of pesticides, all that stuff, and going back to trying to do things naturally. It's a very interesting video, but it does apply to this whole system
Yeah.
idea.
Did you ever read the book Small is Beautiful? Schumacher, that was part of my Christian social ethics class back in.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, back in the 70s, and it's, I guess nobody else.
Your training in February is how I'm retiring in February, so I'm
Oh, wow.
ready and all. What is your, how long is it? How often is it?
So we do 9 sessions. Online, we do 2-hour sessions. In person, we do 2.5-hour sessions.
You can eat,
And
feed that need.
yes, and we also, we do more activities in person once a week. Once a week for 9
It was on
weeks.
Friday mornings this past.
Yeah, last semester we did Friday mornings.
Seems to be the best day for people, but so it'll probably be Friday. We need to just. We just
Yeah,
find the best
let's put it on the
day for
books.
this.
Yeah. Oh, I would love that. We'd love to see you.
This was great. I will try to, maybe some of us can even think about doing this for homework.
Yes, and since we'll see each other next week, then it would be good we can debrief about that. So the backside is really just sort of a checklist type of, have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you considered this? Going back to those principles that we talked about earlier. But
Be cool to bring these to our ministry meeting for the committees, we call them ministries in the church. Evaluate.
there we go.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure being with y'all.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great.
Oh. Thanks, everybody.
How do you get funding?
So, we do have monthly donors. Oh, in fact, we're in the middle of a end of the year campaign. We're trying to get 25 new monthly donors who will give $25 a month. So if anybody's interested, then go to our website. We have monthly donors, but we also receive, we apply for grants all the time. But we also receive we've received an appropriation from the state of Florida through DCF that allows us to serve families who have been impacted negatively by substance abuse as part of that opioid settlement that was distributed to the states. But we also have partnerships with agencies, everybody from, Kids Central to, Early Childhood Court, who, yeah.
Tells us, and we did reach out to them, and we didn't qualify for whatever it was for
They would have to kind of.
yeah, they were very, I
Yeah.
think we do, but we haven't. I'm not gonna hard. Yeah. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
So that's kind of how we operate.
This was great. It was wonderful.
I'm glad. Okay. Well,
The class members that we're collecting stuff and giving.
Oh, right, yes. Anything that you might have to contribute to the baskets for,
Pass out that,
just set in the back and I'll tell Harvey about it.
What are the baskets?
So the baskets, next Sunday afternoon,
We used to gather to fill baskets for those.
Then welcome
in our
you.
church who are
very often get some money.
I was wondering, because I'm like, we may have stuff to give, but it's more like for like younger family, like I was gonna give a children's book or, yeah, okay, so.